I got a comment from someone here in the audience, and I think it's a very interesting one. Take a look because this is very, I don't know how to put it. I think the whole narrative around Xbox has been so strange more than anything else. When I started this channel and I started talking about the market and talking about how I saw Xbox basically making its way to a position of dominating, and then we saw the leaks from Insomniac, I kind of on my own, side of thinking, basically thought, okay, this is a good ground for us to basically see how number three, Underdog, was going to, in a sense, stay sustainable in the market and how they intended to grow their business. I thought majority of Xbox gamers were paying attention to the fact that they were going to leverage, they were going to have to do things in a non-traditional method. PlayStation and Nintendo seemed from the whole conversation that using the traditionalist method was the only way to go, and it made your platform maybe in a sense superior. But all that's only been perception more than anything else. Once the perception barrier is broken and you actually lean into what the reality is, you're going to see a lot more than just the surface level thinking that's pretty much pervaded the conversation all this while. This user said, and they're an Xbox user, this person is an Xbox user, sorry. They said, I'm going to be honest. I'm a full console gamer. I want to play on a console, and I want it to be a true plug and play experience, as it's always been. I chose Xbox because during the Xbox 360, because of the exclusive franchises, especially Halo, Gears of War, and Forza. I still love those franchises despite some releases being a bit mediocre. Part of the reason Xbox as a console hasn't been successful anymore in terms of sales. Well, you're an Xbox gamer, right? You've gamed through the 360, right? Then you should know that the Xbox One came out with a very poor proposition, not necessarily the entire quality of the games. Now, yes, quality of games have taken a hit because there are many more quality games out there, but their console sales woes started way in the Xbox One days. I've made many videos. In fact, I remember sitting with Porter Rock and I said Xbox had sold in its second or third year about 20 million units. That same year, when it had garnered only 20 million units, PlayStation sold 19 million units in the same year. It was a bloodbath. It was because those people who were in charge of actually leading the console release failed to understand the customer's value proposition and made the exact same mistake the PS3 era made. So again, I think we need to go ahead and be fair here to those who've played on Xbox who stuck it through. You say, I also love shooters like Doom, Call of Duty, and Destiny. Used to play it a lot. I stalked through the awful Xbox One generation only for them to abandon their exclusive approach this generation. What else were they supposed to do? You think about it. I want the Xbox, core fans that still feel like exclusivity should have been a thing. I want you to start thinking about it. They didn't sell enough consoles. Who were they going to sell the games to? Who? And they abandoned the exclusive approach in the Xbox One generation, not this generation. In fact, when they abandoned the exclusivity approach back in this, in the Xbox One generation, they were able to stay in business. This is exactly where I've been telling a lot of folk that, hey, you've got to really look at this from the business angle, because if not, the fanboy mix can get in there and start to bother brain instead of your mind to go ahead and say, okay, this company basically got bludgeoned in console sales. We're moving into 2016. It's the live service games that are pretty much constantly taking the cake every year, right? So you have a chunk of your player base that's not going to play a lot of these games and pay for them. So basically, by default, your number of addressable market players are small. The reason PlayStation games sell whack is because there are a bunch of other games out there to compete against PlayStation. That's why their games are doing 6%. God of War Ragnarok sold 15 million units. Everybody said, that's amazing, that's crazy, that's insane, that's this. But not anybody wants to talk about the fact that that game came out on the PS4 and PS5, where it had an overage of at least 100+ million people on the PS4 and more on the, adding that is more on the PS5. When we ran the calculation, that's a 7% turnover. in terms of players who bought your console or who you claim bought your console for exclusives. Imagine Xbox's own predicament if some of PlayStation's biggest franchises, and I'm not talking about Spider-Man. Spider-Man is basically a free ride. It's a scholarship to sales. Imagine even Xbox themselves. So y'all that played on the Xbox, platform at that time, I as a PC gamer, I'm thinking to myself, what is your discontentment? Would you have wanted Xbox to die then in that generation? Because you're over here complaining or saying that, it was weird for them to abandon their exclusive approach when it was abandoning their exclusive approach that actually kept them in business to this generation. So you want to basically have Xbox bite the hand that fed it, because the games now, some of the games, in some cases old, some cases new Bethesda games that are multi-plat, are going to PlayStation. Come on, you gotta be consistent. If you thought that exclusivity approach was that important, you should have switched to the PlayStation generation back then. That's my thinking. You said the only reason I haven't switched to PS5 is because I have Xbox Game Pass till 2027, and Game Pass offering basically all the games I played day one. Also thanks to the acquisitions, okay? Which, if there are not enough people buying games and you make acquisitions, you got to put your games elsewhere. PlayStation has its games on PC. All these PlayStation fanboys talking about console sales and whatever, many of them have to literally mentally gymnastic their way across the fact that these games don't sell as much. They are basically gaslighting you, is what they're doing. They're making you feel discontent. You literally have Game Pass at the tip of your fingers, and you're still like, Xbox doesn't have exclusivity. They don't have exclusivity either. They're literally all on Steam selling games every day. Everybody is selling games everywhere that they can get the games to sell. They don't have the luxury to not sell their games in a non-exclusive fashion. So this is exactly where I say that the Xbox gamer, Microsoft has put you in a position where you can subvert the nonsense called exclusivity. Microsoft is not a company that has grown from exclusivity. They sell their Office software, they sell their server, applications and all that stuff across many platforms. If it wasn't for all that money of non-exclusivity, they would not have been able to buy Activision Blizzard King with cash. So, you got to understand that it's non-exclusivity that's brought Xbox to this point. So when you look at the foundations and then you want somebody to basically go ahead after having built a solid foundation, right, with concrete and all of the, stuff, involved, you then want them to basically take clay and then build the rest of the house. How is that going to work? If Game Pass wasn't as valuable as it is, I would have stopped purchasing games on Xbox and would have likely started building a library on PlayStation 5, because the future of consoles feels more certain and clear with PlayStation than Xbox, to be honest. That's not true. That is absolutely, absolutely not true. If there's anybody who needs a console more than anybody else, it's Xbox. Don't let these people all come out here and fugazi you into some kind of a weird whatever. Let me give you the math. Let's talk about the mathematics right now, because this is something that I think a lot of people are feeling their way through instead of calculating their way through. I told you that the data was the main thing because people can make informed decisions. This year, Circana's boss, Matt Piscatella, came to the forefront with some data sets. Let me point you to the exact video. Go ahead and inform yourself before you go make a decision and go buy into PlayStation's ecosystem where they're barely offering what I think is any value. Okay? So the Kind of Funny podcast with Matt Piscatella. That, to me, the most important thing every gamer should know this year. Here's the podcast right here. In this podcast, I left a lot of bookmarks in this podcast, man. I said bookmarks, timestamps. People were leaving timestamps all over the place because they could not believe their ears. Even though somewhere, somehow, we probably knew some of this. But this gentleman said that 30% of gamers will not buy games. 30% of gamers will not buy games. That already means that a chunk of your addressable market is gone. Do you know where they are? You're a traditional console gamer. Go look at all your friends' lists. They're all playing Call of Duty, which you also said you like playing, Fortnite, right? Which you said you like shooters. They're playing Grand Theft Auto 5 online. Hold on, let me find the data for you. They're playing Roblox. The kids are playing Roblox. The youngins are playing NBA 2K25, as well as some of the, old heads who've played NBA games since back in the, I think the NBA game I first played was in the PS2, ESPN NBA, right? So if I judge myself as a millennial, I can say that there's been a plethora of, NBA games to be played. Rivals, Marvel Rivals, Minecraft, Madden NFL 25, EA College Sports 25, WWE 2K25. A colleague at work was like, man, I'm so excited to go play the new WWE game. That colleague of mine grew up with Randy Orton, the wrestler, right? So he's a huge, that's his name? Yeah. He grew up with Randy Orton. He told me, he's like, yeah, we grew up as kids together, blah, blah, blah. So I'm a huge wrestling fan. And there are a lot of wrestling fans out there, man. It's insane. Millennials too, in some cases, Gen X's. Star Wars Battlefront 2, which is getting a resurgence. Destiny, Apex Legends, Rainbow Six Siege, and Helldivers 2, which is now number 15. These are the games that make you leave exclusivity. That's why these games kicked PlayStation games out of the console. Booted it out. Say, if you want to live, if you want to survive, go find players somewhere else. So math your way through it rather than feel your way through it. You see it? Feels more certain. No, it doesn't. It doesn't feel anything. If anything, it is mathematically pushing to more uncertainty as to how PlayStation's console is going to pretty much survive should Xbox start playing chess with them. Today we'll launch this 20-year-old game. Maybe we won't talk to you about Fable and the next Forza game because, you played that old 5-year, already made more money than Gran Turismo and Need for Speed put together. Do you guys remember that article where it said Forza made more money than GT? Where's the article? Yeah, there it is. Playground Games co-founder says that Forza made more money, more revenue than Gran Turismo even before it launched on PS5. Yeah, they need those consoles to sell more copies. So they're basically pulling money from PlayStation, absorbing money from PlayStation, and are building themselves up. And as they now have 4 publishers, as you said, thanks to the acquisitions, they're going to need more consoles and they're going to need more gamers to sell games to. This is not the time to feel our way through it. You said, and Claire, what? Did you hear PlayStation? They dodged that question in their business meeting. You said, then Xbox. I'm still afraid Xbox will abandon console gaming after the next generation, meaning I'll either be forced to go PC or cloud, or maybe third-party device, which still doesn't sound interesting to me. You only feel so. You just have not calculated your way to that conclusion. The moment you calculate your way to that conclusion, that more and more the gaming market is not growing, you will realize that Xbox has no choice than to stick with traditional console hardware. That's exactly what it is that they need. They will not abandon this market to PlayStation and Nintendo. They are doing an additive measure to their entire base to grow and have more money as they now have more IP, and all that IP needs support. Do you not get it? Bethesda was only profitable when it was multi-plat and barely profitable when it was multi-plat. Activision Blizzard King needed multi-plat to be profitable. PlayStation needs multi-plat to be profitable. Everybody needs multi-plat to be profitable. Feeling is not going to carry anybody through anything. It's dialing into the facts. Even the chief financial lady of PlayStation said that their move to their first-party IP off console is a part of their business growth. Are you kidding me? Just because they didn't say they were going to Xbox? Yo, stay with the facts. Stay with the facts. Feeling is all what the media and all the other press people are saying. I was saying it that if we go with the facts, Xbox would decimate PlayStation in content delivery. I was saying that all the way back as last year. I was calculating the number of IPs and the number of games in the pipelines, and that was a simple mathematical calculation of 4 games each year because we knew Bethesda's release schedule, or at least their projected release schedule, and we looked at PlayStation, and PlayStation was abysmal. And now everyone is like, oh, Xbox just launched 12 games. They were gonna launch, and what were they gonna do with them? Sit in the studios with them while the developers were burning money? I'm out, man. Thanks for watching the video. Appreciate y'all so much. Peace out.